When we move on here 276 to 6.11, static local variables, I will tell you it is a blissfully short explanation, which I think all of us can be in the mood for here. This is on page 348 to start us off with. The idea here is that values do not persist inside of functions, even if a function is called numerous times from someplace. That someplace just happens to be main here. So you can see here behind me on page 348 with program 6-12, we have inside of main on lines 11 and 12, we have two calls to a function called show local. And both times inside of that function, so you can see that starts on 23 and it goes down to line 30-ish on 29, we have a local number or local variable called local num rather, and we initialize it to 5. We change its value to 99, and I believe that we print out, yes we do, its value from inside of show local and then return control back up to main, where main calls this function again and does it again. What you will notice is that each time we call to our partner function, in this case that partner function's name is void show local, that each time we call to show local, those values that we stored do not persist. So they are reinitialized to whatever their initial value is. The reason for this is, like we mentioned before with the idea of local and global variables, like we mentioned then, once we leave the scope of a function, so whether or not that is show local here or the partner function from the previous example, when we leave the scope of those functions, those the values do not persist. So the function terminates, and what C++ does is essentially forgets everything that was in there. All of the space that C++ set aside over here for all of that partner function is simply marked as reuse this. It's garbage now. Just I'm done with it. We're done. That's it. Main does persist. So even though I'm coming in and out of main, so I'm leaving main to go to show local, I'm coming back to main, I'm leaving main to go back to show local, then I come back to main. Main persists because main is where the bulk of the work is not necessarily being done, but that's where the bulk of the work is being called from. So what ends up happening is we do need some persistence there. So main persists, everything else does not. So what you need to be aware of is, and again, this is really just a matter of scope, is that once we leave the scope of one of our partner functions, it is gone. There is nothing that still exists as far as C++ is concerned that is useful any longer. And the reason for that is we can keep calling these functions again and again and again and again. And each time we keep calling these functions, the flow of control goes top to bottom, left to right, in that order exclusively. So that means we have to start at the top and work our way down. So each time we come back to a partner function, in this case on lines 11 and 12, it is show local. It is a new copy of show local. It is not the persisting copy from the last time. So this is a condition in C++. I know I will see a couple of questions on when it gets to the assignment portions of this particular module, which is fine. It takes a while to get used to, the frankly, the lack of permanence that we haven't seen to date. However, once you get the hang of I do work, I throw it away, I do work, I throw it away, I do work, I throw it away, it really does, number one, it makes things much more y- you understand the destructibility of your own code. It makes things much easier. You stop looking for persistence and you create your own persistence, which means you save the results of a function call to a variable that is, local to in probably in CIS 276. I'll tell you honestly, it's here inside of main, but if we are working in 277 advanced or any other classes, we'll be saving those out to files so that there is long-term persistence there. So you will create your own persistence, which is empowering as a developer. The other fantastic thing about this is it speaks to the relative cheapness, honestly, of C++. C++ does not like to reuse things. If there's no reason for persistence, that's the word I'm looking for. If there's no reason for persistence, why bother storing stuff long term? I use the space, I throw it away. I use the space, I throw it away. So it's extremely, extremely compact as far as runtime. It's extremely, extremely compact as far as the resources it needs to run, which again is the big power of C++. So static local variables here on page 348 is going to refer to the preference for C++ to forget things as soon rather as we leave the scope of whatever function block it is that we are referring to.